Happy Independence Day. That's right, Happy Independence Day. That's good. I know all of you, but one person is saying, wait a minute, that was the 4th of July, Dave. That was 14 days ago. Today's the 18th. It's not the 4th of July. But let me suggest maybe that we should celebrate our freedom every day. That every day is a day to be happy about our independence. A little too abstract for you? A little too outside the norm? Well, let's get a little more basic. Is this a happy day for you? Are you happy today? And I know, it's not a complicated question. Are you happy? Well, before you answer that question, you might want to think about it for a moment, because it's kind of a trick question, actually. Because if you think about what it means to be happy, what is happiness, actually? What does it mean to be happy? Happy is circumstantial at best. If we're in a good place where we're responding to things that we enjoy, we can be happy. It is temporary. It's ephemeral. It's fleeting. It's situational, and it's complicated. Happiness is not a simple thing. It's a complicated idea to be happy. I mean, what is happy, really? Is happy the presence of satisfaction, contentment, joy, pleasure? Or is happy just the absence of sorrow, sadness, discouragement, disappointment, worry, fear, and anxiety? What does it mean to be happy? How are we happy? If happiness is a temporary thing, it's a complex thing. I'm sure that if we took a survey right now, we would probably be able to plot your answers on a standard deviation on a bell curve, and 10% of you would say, yes, I am happy. And 10% of you would say, no, I am not happy. And 80% of us would say, I'm not sure that I'm happy. I don't know. I was happy yesterday. I hope to be happy tomorrow. I was happy until you asked me that stupid question. And I'm not happy about it at all. And 80% of us would be confused, because happiness is an elusive idea. Or is it? July the 4th, 1776, the founding fathers of this nation produced a document, signed the document that we famously call the Declaration of Independence. And it is one of the most remarkable political statements that I think has ever been constructed in modern history. It is profound, particularly the second sentence of the Declaration of Independence. Think about how profound it is. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. What a stunning statement. And they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That elusive, complex, circumstantial, ephemeral, abstract idea, along with life and liberty, is at the foundation of the culture that we call America. What does it mean to pursue happiness? Now you may say that that's really chasing after wind. That's pursuing something that you can never attain, because happiness is so elusive and it's unsustainable. But I think I understand it. I think I understand what the founding fathers were pointing to. And what they were pointing to was the symptom. You see, they were running toward the smoke, but what we're really after is the fire. And that's what I want to do today. I want to press in toward the fire. What is the fire that sets us free? Because happiness is simply the byproduct. today, I want us to find our fire. But before we venture into it, would you pray with me for a moment? Father in heaven, I would ask that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart would be pleasing in your sight. That you would use your words spoken by your servant and anointed by your Spirit to remind us of the privilege that we have to be free sons and daughters, to be men and women who pursue that thing that we cannot not do. Pray that we would search for that and pursue that. Pray that for myself, for my family, for all of us here. For I ask that in Jesus' name. Amen. Before we get going today, I have to share with you what happened last week. Last weekend, my wife and I were in Denver, Colorado for a concert. We had planned 2 years ago to spend the summer of 2020, or part of the summer of 2020, Jeeping in Colorado. I have a Jeep, and I convinced my wife that since I have this Jeep, we need to go somewhere where it matters. And I said, we're gonna drive all around the Jeep trails of Colorado. We're gonna spend a few weeks doing that in the summer of 2020. And we were gonna go visit some friends who are in Ouray. Ever been to Ouray, Colorado? And they said the 4th of July in Ouray is crazy. So we were gonna drive on some Jeep trails over from Durango to Ouray and then go up to some friends we have in Aspen and hopefully see some friends that live in Beaver Creek. And we're gonna wind up in Denver visiting some friends in Denver. And then we were going to go to a concert at a place called Red Rocks. Have you ever been to Red Rocks in Denver? Well, we had never been there, and we were going to see a band called the Avett Brothers from North Carolina. We were going to go to their concert, and that was in the summer of 2020. Do you remember what happened in the summer of 2020? We didn't have a summer of 2020. Summer of 2020 was canceled, so we didn't get to go. So the promoter said, well, we'll postpone the concert till next year. And we didn't want to drive the Jeep all over Colorado. Frankly, my wife didn't want to do that to begin with, because it's fun to drive a Jeep. It's not fun to ride in a Jeep on the trails. It's like riding on the back of a motorcycle. Nobody likes that. I don't care what they tell you, Eric. But the reality is we went to Denver, and so on last Sunday morning, we were in this fancy hotel in downtown Denver, and we were sitting there in our luxurious terry cloth bathrobes, and we ordered room service breakfast, and we went to church. We watched Riverbend online at 9:30. It was so good, we watched it again at 11. And I got to tell you, I get it. I know why you're at home right now. I understand it. But if I can say anything to you right now, put your clothes on. But we were sitting there, and I was eating breakfast, and here's the beauty of the whole affair. I was eating a Denver omelet in Denver. And I'm watching my family have church, and it was really good. It was really good. And then I saw something that if you were here last week, you saw it. It was a thing called Stephanie Rollins. Did you appreciate Stephanie Rollins last week? And I have been suspicious of this for a while. I had been suspicious that Stephanie has a call of God on her to teach. Met her almost 2 years ago. My wife introduced me to her, and she was one of the women who's involved in the leadership of our women's ministry with my wife, Diane. And she met Stephanie. As I got to know Stephanie, I was suspicious. See, I smelled the smoke. And I thought, maybe this is something that she cannot not do. Because that's what freedom is, you see. Freedom is being in that place where we do that thing we were born to do, we're called to do, we are destined to do. A couple of weeks ago, well, actually it was back in April, we did a study that I called Riverbend 101. It was the basics of Riverbend Church. What is Riverbend about? And I suggested if you want a shorthand definition of what Riverbend Church is, theologically, Riverbend Church is the church of the John 8 Jesus. And I suggested that because in John chapter 8, Jesus messes with people. Jesus is radical. Jesus really says some things that are outrageous and does things. It starts with the story of the woman caught in adultery in John chapter 8. And then he makes the statement about how he is the light of the world. And the chapter ends with this long session on how hard life is, but how good God is. And so we talked about the philosophy, and we talked about the psychology. We even talked about the science of Riverbend Church, but we skipped over a section, 6 verses in the middle, verses 31 to 36 of John 8, because I wanted us to study it beginning on the 4th of July, because it talks about what I think is the politics of Riverbend. And I suggested that the politics of Riverbend are simple. We are seekers of truth. We are people who will relentlessly, ceaselessly interrogate the world around us. We will investigate and we will search and we will seek truth. That is our political point of view. We are seekers of truth. And what I mean when I say we are seekers of truth, theologically, what I mean is we interrogate what we believe. We investigate what we say we believe. Do we actually believe these things? How does our faith actually work in the world around us? And so for the last 3 weeks, we've been talking about what is this investigation? What does it mean to seek truth? Because it's when we seek truth that we find freedom. So what Jesus began to talk about in verse 31, in John 8:31, Jesus is talking to, John tells us, he's talking to the Jews who believed him. Obviously it was the Jews because he was in an inner court in the temple. The only people there were Jews. But these were a select group of people, and he was addressing the ones who were shaking their head, who were saying, I think I get what you're talking about. And to the Jews who believed in him, he said, if you hold to my teaching, and that doesn't mean just to hold it up like a trophy. It means if you hold on to it, if you interrogate it, if you investigate it, if you get a grasp on it, if you get a handle on my teaching, that's what it means to be my disciples. That you're constantly seeking to know more. You're seeking the truth. And then he said, if you do hold on to my truth, you really are my disciples, then you will know the truth. And that truth will set you free. Last week, it was Stephanie Rollins who expertly unpacked the response of the religious leaders there in the temple. The religious leaders got their shorts in a knot, and they were all harumphing. And they said, wait a minute, we are Abraham's descendants. We have never been slaves to anyone. As Stephanie correctly pointed out, that was a lie. They were in slavery. The Antonia fortress, a Roman garrison, was attached to the temple. They were literally standing in the shadow of it. The Jewish people have been the most persecuted and enslaved group of people, nation of people, perhaps in modern human history. And they said, we have never been slaves of anyone. How can you possibly say that we shall be set free? See, they were thinking theologically. They weren't thinking politically. Politically, that was nonsense. But theologically, they realized that their faith, their belief, couldn't be taken from them. It was intrinsic to them. So they were free to believe what they wanted to believe, even though they were culturally enslaved. And I'd like to think that Jesus said, is that where we're going to talk? We're going to talk at a theological level? Well, let me tell you this. Everyone who sins is a slave of sin. You may think you're free, but you are not. There are things you cannot choose not to do. And then the last 2 verses, and this is where I want us to spend a moment today. The last 2 verses, Jesus makes this connection. He says a slave has no permanent place in the family. A slave is maybe in the family and around the family, but they're not of the family. But a son or a daughter, a child of the family, they belong to the family forever. You see, what I'm talking about is your position, your place, which cannot be taken from you. The thing you cannot not be. Because if the Son sets you free, he says, then you are free indeed. Now, the Jewish leaders there were not understanding this. Jesus was making a radical distinction between the obligation of the law and the freedom of grace. Because the difference between a slave and a son, the difference between an employee and a family member, was that a family member didn't deserve that. They didn't earn that. It was given to them. It is a birthright. And because of that, it can never be taken from you. In a couple of weeks, my younger sister, my younger brother, and I are going to travel to eastern Pennsylvania. We're going to travel to the property that has been our family farm since the Civil War. And it is now a public park. My parents sold it to the county, and it's a park and 50 acres of recreation grounds. But we're going to go back to our family farm because over the last 2 years, both my mother and my father have died, and my aunt, who is my mother's sister, died of COVID last year, and we haven't had a chance to have a celebration of their life, to have a memorial. We want to inter their ashes in the family burial plots there at the church that my great-great-grandfather helped build down the road from the farm. So it's an important time for our family to gather together, and we're going to go there, and my brother and sister and I are going to just take a chance one last time to reflect on the generations of memories that are embedded in the ground there on that farm in Pennsylvania. But my brother's daughters and my daughters are going to go with us. And even though they've never lived on that farm, they've only ever visited that place, this is theirs too. They were born into this family. Even though they never had to shovel the stuff out from the cow stalls or feed the pigs or take care of the chickens or do the chores on the farm like my brother and my sister and I had to do, they are just as much a part of the family as my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents and generations before them. When you're born into a family, it's not because you earn it. It's not because you deserve it. It's not even because you choose it. It's because you recognize that this is who I am. There's a street-level application of this, and I want to skip ahead to that. And the street-level application to this comes to me, and people ask me this all the time. They say, Dave, how do I know if my life matters? How do I know if my life makes a difference? Because I want to make a difference. Don't we all? We all kind of say, I'd like the world perhaps to be a better place when I leave it than when I got here. I'd like to know that my life made a difference, that it mattered. How do I do that? How do I know that my life matters? And the answer is simple. Live worthy of your inheritance. Live worthy of your family. The practical, street level way to say it is do the thing you cannot not do. Do the thing you were born to do. Find that thing. And it may be an occasional thing, or it may be a calling, maybe something that you do for a season. Maybe it's your role as a parent. Maybe it's an opportunity. Or maybe it's something you do every day over the course of your life. What is the thing you cannot not do? Find that, and you will be free. The way that we find that is by searching for the truth. We search for the truth about the world we live in. We search for the truth about God. We search for the truth about ourselves. And we know the truth, then the truth sets us free. What does Jesus say in John 8:36? He says, if the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. This is the politics of Riverbend. That's why we do the things we do, because we are seekers of truth. Seekers of truth about the world that we live in, seekers of truth about God, and seekers of truth about ourselves. It's how we make a difference in the world. It's how we operate. It's how we celebrate our freedom. A couple of years ago, I was given a link to a video, and I watched a video of a young worship leader in Southern California preach his very first sermon. Now, this young man was not strange to me. I knew his family. His brother actually worked here. I knew his father before he died. But the young man was standing here leading us in worship this morning. It's Travis Taylor. And I watched the video of the very first time he ever preached a sermon in his church. And I smelled the smoke. Saw the same thing that I saw in Stephanie Rollins last week. I saw the thing that they cannot not do. So we hired Travis and we brought him to Austin, and he's been here for a couple of years now, and he and I meet regularly to talk about that, to find out the truth. Is that really who you are, who you're called to be? We invited Stephanie Rollins to join us, and regularly we get together and we talk about this. How do you do this thing? Because I think I see the fire in them. And if I can help fan that flame, if I can encourage that, I want to get near that. I want to set that free. See, I think that's what was going on in the mind of the founding fathers. They said, you know, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And we have been given by God, our Creator, certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of that thing that we cannot not do. The freedom to pursue our calling, our destiny, to make a difference. And when we do that, the smoke of that smells like happiness. Or maybe not. Maybe, I don't know. Happiness is such a confusing thing. Maybe it's more than happiness. Maybe it's much more complicated. But are you happy? Are you happy today? And I realize that's a trick question. Maybe the best way to answer that question, are you happy, is with someone who did an extensive study on happiness. His name is Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown asked over and over again, you know, what is happiness? I'm looking for happiness. And if you're familiar with the Charlie Brown comic strip, you'll know that there are countless memes of what happiness is. Like happiness is a long weekend. Isn't that nice? And happiness is sleeping in. Oh, that's so good. The most famous one is happiness is a warm blanket. Good thing that I was not writing the Charlie Brown cartoon, or it would say something sarcastic like this. Happiness is you leaving. Or maybe this one. This is really sarcastic and bitter. Happiness is you telling me how to do my job. Or the one that I wish I could say more often, happiness is me not giving a crap. Maybe the question isn't, are you happy? Maybe the most important question we can ask today is, are you free? Are you free? Because if you are, that is worth celebrating. And that's why I wish that today would be for you a happy Independence Day.